Let's see how we're doing here. All right, looks like we are live. Good. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. It's been a little while since I did one of these, so I've been wanting to do this one for a while, but I've been actually really busy. The truck kind of broke down, and it's important that the truck works. So I've been working very hard to get that working, and most of that was fighting rust and corrosion. It's an old truck. We're both old, so I can appreciate its problems. But now it's back on the road, and I'm happy with the results. So that being done, I can kind of afford some time to do this. Also, my wife and I were watching a video this morning. Some younger scientists, climate scientists, talking about climate science, and it just kind of got me aggravated, and that made me think, it's been a while since I did a video. And not that I come on here, well, I guess I often come on here to be aggravated, but the truth is, it's when I'm really busy. I have a lot of things on my mind. Really, I have a lot on my mind. So generally something rises to the surface when it aggravates me, okay? That's the sign of somebody who's kind of probably overcommitted. So I got a little aggravated this morning, and that reminded me that 3 weeks ago I wanted to do this reaction video to Rupert Read, and maybe I should just go ahead and do that. So, hi, I'm back. I have a Band-Aid on my face, wrong side, Band-Aid on my face. Went to the dermatologist, and there was a little dark spot, so they wanted to sample that and send that off to the lab. So once again, I'm fine. Another reason I haven't been on much recently is because my wife has also been very busy, and she often takes time to watch climate videos and climate news and various presentations. She's on Twitter. She has a lot of news feeds, and so she brings things to my attention, and we'll talk about them, and then I'll sometimes come on here and talk about it some more. Basically taking her and my conversations and making them public. So, but she's been really busy. So in fact, today she's off with her friend Meredith, and they're doing some kitchen witchcraft. They're making soap, and they make really good soap. Olive oil, and I don't know what else goes into it, but anyway, it's really great soap. So they're making soap, good for them. Yeah, that's the thing. People can make soap. It's not even complicated. And it's a fun thing to do with a friend. So they're doing that, and I'm here by myself, and it's a cold day. I should be out there working anyway, but I wanted to do this video, damn it, and so I'm going to do it. This is Rupert Read. So Rupert Read, I like Rupert. He's an Englishman. He's soft-spoken. He has a great accent, of course, and he's a philosopher. Now, philosophy is science adjacent. Before we started calling it science, or any of the fields of science, right, like biology or herbology or whatever else, before we started having actual sciences, we have what they used to call natural philosophy. So the origin of science is actually in philosophy, and it kind of broke away, became more mathematical, and of course more fact-based as we learned more things. Not that philosophy isn't fact-based, but as science learned more things, it became less philosophical and simply more presentational. Here's what we know. Here's what we've learned. Here's what we think is going on. And that's a little different than philosophy, because philosophers tend to look at the bigger picture. Let's put it that way. So he's a philosopher, but he talks about global heating, climate change, and all those allied things. And he's been doing it for a long time. I've been following him. Well, I don't follow him, but when I see his material on YouTube, I generally give it a glance, right? So I've been aware of his goings on for a while. He is based in England. I don't know if he was a co-founder or an early participant in Extinction Rebellion, which is also in the UK. Extinction Rebellion, that's Hammond's kit and caboodle. He was a part of that, and I think he's kind of broken away from it, which is interesting for me if that's true. And it kind of comes out in this video, I think, a little bit. And I've noticed some suggestion that he's broken away from XR. And that's because he doesn't, I don't want to speak for the guy, but the gist I get is that he doesn't think that activism is the right way forward. And of course, I'm totally foursquare in agreement with that. We need to stop gluing ourselves to tractors and throwing canned soup on the Mona Lisa. This is, if I thought that would work, if I thought that was helpful, then I would say, yeah, sure, fine, go ahead. But it's not. It's not. It wouldn't do us any better if we were on the Titanic and we hit the iceberg and everyone's running around trying to figure out what to do, and the captain walked up to you and you hit him in the face with your fist, right? Or threw canned soup on him, right? It's like, okay, you can do that, I guess. Do you feel better? But that doesn't stop the Titanic from sinking. You see my point? So I think he's kind of given up on activism. He's allowing himself to face the truth that we're going down. And in this video, which I watched with considerable interest, and I watched it more than once just to make sure I got it right. Now, it was 3 weeks ago, so we're gonna go through this. I'm gonna watch it with you, and I'll be making comments on the things that he shares. But by the time I got to the end of his video more than once, I was actually pretty impressed. He seems. So I'm talking a lot about this video. We should just watch it, right? But I'm trying to prime you a little bit. He seems really sad to me. And in his earlier work dealing with this topic of, he still calls it climate change, that's fine. I think he was a little more, I want to put it in air quotes, upbeat or optimistic. Was I ever optimistic? I'm a scientist, a mathematician, a physicist. I understand really what's happening, and there hasn't been any room for optimism in a long time. But he's a philosopher, right? And philosophers tend to be more humanist, right? They want to think that people can do better. They want to think that the best of people, it's out there, and we can reach it, and we can make the world a better place through better expectations, better behavior, and better modeling of behavior. And he's a philosopher, right? He's kind of like a spiritual leader, right? Wants to think the best of people. And, well, I completely gave up on people a long time ago. Hell, I identify as a cougar. So what do you expect from me, right? Savagery. And that's what you get every single time. Savagery. But, he's looking a little burned out to me. And I think he no longer associates with XR. I don't think he's part of their scene anymore. At least not a core part of it. And he's really reflecting in this video about our situation. And if you've been on my channel much and watched my videos, I've reflected on this. We're kind of fucked. He didn't say it that way, but I'm the resident savage, so I can say whatever I want to say. I don't have to be nice about it. You and I, my family, your family, all your neighbors, everyone that drives by in front of my house in their car, we're all basically seriously fucked. And really anybody alive today, even if they're 80 years old, is going to live long enough to be seriously fucked. Because it's here. It's coming. The locomotive is here. And we're in the tunnel and we're looking for a way out. And there is no way out. We're just going to get whacked. We're going to get steamrolled. That's just how it is. That's what the math is showing. That's what the science is suggesting. That's what the data is heading for. We're just going to get whacked. So I am rambling on and on. He's talking about this in his terms as a philosopher. And I appreciated it. And he's better spoken than I am. The irony is we're not going to be listening to his video. I don't have audio patched through from my browser. So I turn on the captions. We can read what he's saying. And I will be commenting on that. And we'll get through this. The link to this original video is in my description of my reaction, so please do go and watch his presentation, because he's very well spoken. He's very soothing to listen to, and he's not pulling any punches. He never really did, but he always was kind of optimistic, like this is going to be bad, but we can do this. And in this presentation, he says this is going to be bad. And this is going to be bad. And I think that's a more common point of view these days than you're going to be aware of through the media. The media doesn't carry this much. You know, he got a friendly crowd. He got some people who let him say what he wanted to say, platformed him, took the video, put it up on YouTube 3 weeks ago. And what is the name of this organization? I'm just going to peel over here real quick and take a look. I don't know who this is. It's his own channel. Okay, Rupert Read. This is his channel, the Rupert Read channel. And he's got 4,400 subscribers. So he did this video, this presentation to a group, and then he put it up on his own channel. Who knows what they did with it, right? They may have said, well, that was sucky. We're never going to let that see the light of day. But he has his own channel, so he put it up. And that's how I ran into it. So that's what happened. You know, I don't get platformed much. Well, how many? I've got 60 followers or something as of this date, October 25th, 2024. I've got 60 subscribers. And but hey, you guys are pretty loyal. Thank you you keep coming back. And, you know, I regularly get 40, 50 views on a video, and I'm sure most of those are the people who are subscribing to my videos, because otherwise you're not going to know where I am or who I am or what I talk about. So good on you. Let's hit us up some Rupert Read and see what he's been about. I'm going to change over to this, and then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to start the video. And again, there's no audio from his video. You need to go watch his video. He's an Englishman. He has great voice, great accent, great diction. You'll come away feeling wonderful, except he says that you're doomed. But that's okay. You'll feel great about it, you know? I'm only half joking. So let's play this. Before I play this, it starts out with a clip. It's like a video, a movie trailer. He starts out with a movie trailer, but I don't think it's a movie. I think it's just a trailer-like thing. And it's really well done. And he says some things. And then, of course, then his presentation starts. So he previews his trailer for himself. And then he gives his presentation. And I'm not going to say much about the trailer, but it is in the beginning. So you may as well watch it. Remember, there's no audio. You'll have to go watch this yourself. Humanity is calling. Be silent. Decide with truth. Okay, fine. This is the Leadership Summit in Portugal. I guess he was invited. What's going on with... Throughtopia. This is a theme of his talk. And here's the trailer. We've created everyone we love, everyone yet to be, born everywhere, and everyone is now on the climate front, right? As if it's a war, right? Which it is. We put too much pressure on the living systems on which we depend. The house of cards is starting to fall. This is true. And like so many before it, our civilization is unraveling. Our civilization is unraveling. You need to think about that. I talk about that all the time. I've written well, it's no longer a short story. It's really a short novella, about 100 days of exactly that happening. And I really need to finish it. Again, I'm just so busy. I need some bad weather, basically. I need some rain so that I can get stuck indoors so I can work on my story. Anyway, yeah, this civilization is unraveling. And wow. It's hard to wrap your head around that. Like, what does that even mean? Well, this is where, if you've studied much of history, you can go back and easily find examples of civilizations that have unraveled. And some of them are not even in the deep, dark depths of history. We don't really know what happened to the Sumerians. We don't know what happened to the Babylonians, not really. We don't know what the Bronze Age collapse was about. We have some theories, but a lot of what happens during a collapse is information gets lost. And people didn't have paper at the time, right? They did their recording of information in clay tablets or chiseled into limestone. They recorded important things this way, but they didn't record day by day like in a diary what happened. So we kind of don't know. This civilization that we're in right now is collapsing, and you need to pay attention. You need to pay attention. Because that's a fact. And somebody will emerge on the other side of this and they'll have something to say about this. Maybe they'll say something about what happened to us right now, and maybe they won't. You're living it. Unless you're really old and already, in an old folks home watching, reruns of Archie Bunker, then yeah, you're going to live through this. Anyway, let's see what Rupert has to say. We can still control to an extent how hard the landing is, how many people survive, and how many other species get taken out. I'm not real comfortable with the, I don't know why I double clicked on that. I'm not real comfortable with the word control in this context. I think I know what he means by we can still control the descent. I call that a controlled demolition. As opposed to an uncontrolled demolition. But right now, we are on a path of uncontrolled demolition. Just foursquare, 24/7, uncontrolled. We are not trying to control our descent. We are going straight down, and we are going to auger into a crater. So when he says, we can still control this, that's his optimism. Okay, fine. Be optimistic. What can I say? Go ahead. I think we can decide to put our energies, our intelligence, and our famous human spirit into ensuring that the ending of this civilization is as transformational as possible. Let's save as many people. Let's restore as many habitats. Let's rebuild what's worth rebuilding. And while we're doing so, let's collectively rethink what it's all about so that we can get, if we get another chance, we can do things much differently or better. It got cut off. It'll come here in a minute. The transcription service is laggy. So now his presentation. This is Rupert Read, and again, there's no audio. Sorry, you have to go watch. You have to go watch this yourself, and I really encourage you to do that. So that was me. That was a bit more information about why I might be worth listening to. Yeah, that's probably true. How bad is it going to get? And having seen that little film, you might want to ask me a question like, how bad is it going to get? And in reply, I am tempted to channel a fictional character that some of you will be familiar with. Yeah, this is an interesting quote. Legolas the elf in Lord of the Rings said at the death of Gandalf, someone saying, okay, what are the elves singing about the death of Gandalf? And his response is, here's his response. He replies, I have not the heart to tell. I have not the heart to tell you. So what I have to try to do is summon that heart. All right. So our situation is bad. And I think that a lot of what we call scientific reticence, and a certain amount of what I was listening to this morning with this group of young scientists talking about climate change and how important research is and getting people to understand the importance of research so they can all do more research, okay, is really these young people, they're 30-somethings, right? Even some 20-somethings on a YouTube channel talking about climate data. They just haven't got the heart. They're too young. I mean, you have to be old like me to face this shit head on. And what is it that makes old people so apt to face reality? Hard, painful, humiliating reality. Well, part of it is, we're getting old. And so one reality we've had to face individually is all the changes in our lives that kind of all happen at once. Our children grow up and leave home and start their own lives. Okay, that's a certain reality. We get physically older, and the pains and the things and the bandages and the whatever. Okay, that's a reality. You have to face it. As you get older, people that are a little older than you start to die or end up in losing their minds to Alzheimer or ends up in the hospital all the time or whatever, and you're facing that, right? Because you're watching what they're going through, and that's your future too. And so as you get older, and you lose your friends, you lose touch with people, your children move out and move away, and you don't hear from them very much, although my wife and I are fortunate. Our children stay in touch, but of course not everybody has that privilege. You just you just exercise a muscle that maybe you always had, but you didn't use it much, which is just facing reality. Because reality, not even good reality, like, oh, it's my birthday today, yay, I get a cake and prezzies. Okay, not that kind of reality, but just the daily unfolding of your individual personal reality. And so, whereas Legolas didn't have the heart to say what they were singing about the death of Gandalf, Legolas is basically a young person. And like these young scientists I was listening to this morning, doesn't have the heart to say it. Well, I do. And so does Rupert Read. And he's tired. He's seen it all. He heard it all. He has plumbed the depths of human failure, as I have, as old people must, as we watch people fail over and over and over again to do what they must be done, right? The controlled demolition, as they just refuse to do it. And we just have to watch. We have to watch them fail. The spiritual leaders and the economists and the politicians and all the other purveyors of abstraction, they just fail to do it. And there's no escaping it. So I recently worked until very recently at the University of East Anglia. Why did you get fired? Interesting. Alongside some of the world's leading climate scientists, so I have a great privilege of being able to meet with these people in informal settings, and that's key. Let me pause here. Informal settings. When scientists get together with scientists, they talk about data and charts and figures and equations and algorithms and artificial intelligence but when you get them, and that's all fine, and that's science, so that's what they should talk about. But when you get them in the bar and you're having a couple beers under your belt and you get to talking informally, a different story comes out. They're scared. They won't endanger their careers or really let science slip away for a moment in their professional life to be scared. But in their private life, in an informal setting, they speak of their fear. I am fearful of what's coming. I am. I'm fearful, but I know it's coming. And I know it can't be stopped. And so at some point, when you realize that, fear is not appropriate. It just isn't. When you realize that the Titanic has just hit the iceberg, you're fearful. But at some point, when they say, yeah, it's going down, and you've got to get off the ship, then you're not fearful anymore. Maybe if you're a child, you're fearful. Maybe some women would be fearful because fear is sort of a instinctive reaction to calamity. But men are not fearful at that point. Men become resolved. And really, any adult can simply say, all right, this is it. We're doing this. And just become resolved and just face it. Now we got to go. Now we got to do something. We have to get off the ship. We have to run away from the fire. We have to dig ourselves out of the rubble, whatever we have to do. And at some point, fear is not appropriate. Fear is the enemy. And you just have to lift yourself up and dust yourself off and say, okay, here we go. This is it. Sink or swim. Fight or flight. And you just have to do it. England often with a pint of beer or perhaps a cup of tea. See, he's talking about informal settings, right? When you get scientists in informal settings, you get a different story. Not that the formal story is a lie. It's the truth. But what you get in an informal setting is their fears and their anxieties about the truth. Is that clear? Does that make sense to you? See, I don't do science. No one's paying my salary to get on here and say facts, facts, facts. I can be as angry or as fearful or as resolved as I want to be. This is my informal setting. And that's why you're getting what you get from me. I call it savagery, and it kind of is. I mean, it's time to become a savage. It's just time to like any animal would, to just say, well, this sucks. What can I do? Is there anything all I can do to preserve myself and the things that are important to me? And if there is, you have to do that. You have to do it. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on. He's the philosopher, right? And inevitably the conversation falls to, okay, how bad is it going to get? And what they always say, the scientists, is something like this. You know what we write in our papers and what we publish, what you see in the media, it's going to be worse than that. Ta-da! And because science only put out their papers what they can prove, they actually think what they suspect that they fear is always worse. So if people tell you, if you ever hear the message, oh, we're running out of time on climate, we only got a few minutes left, if you will, it's 5 minutes to midnight, it's very urgent that we take action to make everything okay. The truth is, this is not 5 minutes to midnight. It's 5 minutes past midnight. Okay? This is one of the messages in the media, often offered by working scientists, that we still have time. And the Rupert Read right here, and he's with more scientists than I'm with. Okay? Let's just face it. I'm working on my truck. I'm not hanging out at universities having a beer or a cup of tea with working scientists. I'm under my truck fixing the brakes. Okay? But I know what he's saying, because I know how this shit works. And he's saying, you know, when they're writing their papers or they're presenting to the TED Talk or they're talking to politicians, they'll say, it's 5 minutes to midnight and we have 5 minutes left on the global crisis clock and the minutes are ticking away. But when you get them in a bar and you give them a beer and you say, so what about that 5 minutes to midnight? Is it as bad as that? Then they'll tell you, no, it's not as bad as that. It's 5 minutes after midnight. It's 5 minutes after midnight. Then why didn't you say that? Because that would be a career terminating move for me to say it's 5 minutes after midnight. I wouldn't get any more grants. I wouldn't be invited to any more TED Talks. I wouldn't be on this stage. I wouldn't be on that video. No one would want to hear what I have to say if I say it's 5 minutes after midnight. Although that is the truth. They can't say it. I can say it because I'm a fucking savage. No one can tell me what to say. I'll say whatever I want to say. And I'm telling you, it's 5 minutes after midnight. And that's what Rupert Read is hearing when he's hanging out with scientists in England and they're having a beer and they're talking about the reality and they're saying, oh yeah, we got no time. In fact, we've lost time. We're way, way past having time left to do anything. It's just too late. It's too late. Now, you don't want to hear that it's too late. Everyone wants to be optimistic. Optimism is self-serving. Optimism is the lie. You've still got time. That's the lie. That's the story people want to hear. Oh, don't worry. I guess it could get bad, but right now you've still got time. Okay, phew, that's a relief. That's what people want to hear. I'm here to tell you, you got no time. Oh, and by the way, just to use my usual analogy, when the Titanic hit the iceberg, you had no time. Now, it doesn't matter that it takes the captain 30 minutes to actually make an announcement. Okay, well, the ship is going down, all hands on deck. All right. It doesn't matter that it takes the captain 30 minutes to finally make his announcement and tell you what you maybe have already been suspecting, but you just didn't have enough data to understand that you've got no time left. And as soon as the Titanic hit that iceberg and started taking on water, even if it took them 30 minutes to figure it out, they were already done. They were already done. And when the engineers back at port heard what happened over telegraph, they said, oh, yeah, well, you're going down. And it might have still taken the captain 10 minutes to get on the horn and say all hands on deck, lower the lifeboats. Still may have taken him 10 minutes. He was done the entire time. And that's what we're talking about here. It's not 5 minutes to midnight. It's not 5 minutes until we hit the iceberg. We've already hit the iceberg. We're fucked. Now, how can you say that in a way that people will hear it? Well, the truth is, you can't. Or you can get on YouTube, like I'm right here with my 60 subscribers, my 60 followers. You can come on here, you can say, oh yeah. Or like Rupert Read does on his own channel, by the way. You can get on there and you come on here and you can say, oh yeah, you're fucked. I don't really know what that means for you personally. I don't know what you're going to do about that or if you can do anything about that, but yeah, sure. Let's just have some truthology here, shall we? And what you are is you're fucked. Okay, moving on from there. I mean, where do you go from there? Well, you can be fearful. You can be afraid. You say, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. How did this happen? I don't know what to do. I'm going to sit here and suck my thumb. You could do that. Or you could man up or woman up. And you could say, okay, wow, that's it, huh? I mean, I kind of had a suspicion, but thank you for, saying it so bluntly. Now I can kind of act on that because you were blunt. So thank you. Thank you. That's an actual service. At this point, bluntness is appropriate. And if you're going to sit there and in a fetal position and suck your thumb as a result, well, then get on with it. But a lot of us are not going to collapse into a heap and suck our thumb. A lot of us are going to say, all right, okay, now what? What should we do? Is there anything we can do? Should we go somewhere else? Do we need to be somewhere else? Do we need to do something with our families and our neighbors and our friends? What can we do? I'm ready to hear it. And that's what this channel has been all about. You need to understand that you're in trouble. You need to understand that it's 5 minutes past midnight. You got no time. You're now in the negative. And every day that you waste is a day that you're going to wish the hell you had. Back to Rupert. We are deep in the danger zone. We are in the age of consequences. Everything is not going to be okay. Is that clear enough for you? Let me explain slightly more what I mean by that. So here's a newspaper story from some time ago. I don't know how relevant all this is. We'll just run with it, shall we? Now it says we're going to pass through the maximum limit that we are supposed to remain below of 1.5 degrees rise in average global temperatures relative to a pre-industrial baseline. Why does this number matter? Why is this important? Don't take my word for it. And this is the problem with dealing with numbers. Oh, it's a number. Could it be a different number? If it's a different number, what difference does that make? 1.5 is not an arbitrary number. It is a planetary boundary that we go beyond. When we go beyond, if we go beyond 1.5, we are out of the safe zone. Now, let me just... There's a little bit of revisionism there. James Hansen in 1989, I think it was, gave testimony to Congress. Yes, 1989. Gave testimony to the U.S. Congress. Al Gore invited him in. Remember Al Gore and how much scorn people heaped on him? James Hansen, then director of, Earth Studies at NASA or Goddard Institute or something. I should know these things, but I don't. He said, James Hansen said, 1 degree C is bad. We're definitely over 1 degree C. So you could say, oh, well, so 1.5 is now the new baseline. Did you know that people are already saying, oh, well, 1.5, yes, we're past 1 and we're past 1.5. That's too bad. But really, the problems won't start till 2.0. And so it's happening. This is what they're doing. They're moving the goalposts. They're moving the goalposts. And we'll go through 2.0 and they say, 2.0. We didn't really mean what we said back then about 2.0. It's really 3.0. 3 degrees C above pre-industrial baseline temperature increase. 3 degrees is, that's probably a problem, maybe. We don't even know. And you can predict right now, once we pass 3 degrees C, they'll say, oh, it's actually 4. F3, we didn't really know what we were talking about. Now it's 4 is the real target. They're just going to keep moving the baselines. He just did it. Because James Hansen said 1 degree C. And, he's a climate scientist. He had the entire resources of NASA behind him when he said that. The computers and the scientists and the data and the everything. And, by the way, even though he's retired, he has used his James Hansen has used his retirement to actually come out and just be a savage. He's just off the leash, man. And he's saying things like, oh, yeah, we're going straight to 10. There's no turning back now, people. We're on our way. We're on greased skids. We're just going for broke. And that the earth is going to become uninhabitable for human purposes. That's what he's saying. And back in 1989, he was saying 1 degree C is a hard limit. And now we're over 1.5, headed for 2 on greased skids. So I would not assume that 1.5 is safe. We already had an estimate that 1.0, 1 degree C above average, was all we could really tolerate. And given all the things happening in the world right now, as we just exceed 1.5, yeah, James Hansen was right. He was right. So here's something from a couple of years ago at an event with a load of my colleagues, away from the gaze of the media. Yeah, you can't let the media get involved. All the members were also asked, do we have a chance of staying below 1.5? Is 1.5 still alive? There were about 60 of us in the room. Nobody thought it was still alive. And James Hansen doesn't think that 4.0 is alive. Not in play. We're going right over that. Right through that like a bullet. And since then, we have passed the 1.5 degree temperature limit. This is average. This is no longer a theoretical question. We have been above 1.5 pre-industrial temperatures on this planet for over a year. Fact. Fact. Now, but maybe this talk of 1.5 seems somehow very abstract to you. Maybe you don't see what it really amounts to or means. So let me give you a more concrete indication of what it means. So he has this graph. Shows you what is the imbalance. Graphs, numbers. I don't approve. I really don't. We have to get beyond this. He's trying to use science and data to justify his own pessimism. Actually, you don't really need science and data to be pessimistic. And him as a philosopher, he should be more pessimistic than I am, because the pessimism is based on human behavior. Human behavior, not the data. If the chart goes up or the chart wobbles or the chart goes down for a bit, then it goes up again. This is all completely opaque to people. People can't read charts. People don't understand numbers. James Hansen said we shouldn't exceed 1. We've already exceeded 1.5. And we'll almost certainly exceed 2. We might even exceed 2 in the next couple of years. And none of this means anything to anybody. They're just numbers. And they're not even big numbers. Although 10 degrees C above a pre-industrial baseline will probably lead to human extinction. Certainly extirpation. There will be continents with no humans on them to speak of. Crazy. 10 degrees C. 10 is not a big number. Finally, just hitting double digits. And already, we have to talk about human near-term extinction. And I'm not joking. This is not hyperbole. If you don't understand it, yes, I understand you don't understand it. I understand you don't believe it. I understand you don't get it. Sucks to be you, I guess, because that's where you're headed. And numbers and charts don't really help us. We cannot go on like this. We will not be able to go on like, again, the lag, this. Here's a quote for you. The risk of catastrophic and irreversible disaster is rising, implying potentially infinite costs of unmitigated climate change, including in the extreme human extinction. That sounds like a pretty extreme remark. It's not. Who would say something as strong as that? Perhaps it was some very radical scientist. Perhaps it was some radical activist saying that we're headed for extinction. Could be some savage cougar, okay? No, it's the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund. They're a banking system. They're a banking system. Now, the banks, along with the insurance industry, have to be data-driven. The insurance industry calculates risk. When they write you a policy for your home against, say, fire or flood, they've got a whole army of analysts calculating what is the risk of fire or flood. And if your risk of fire, just to pick one, being in California, if your risk of fire is really high, then your premium has to go up because there's a real risk of a payout. And they don't want to be caught, underestimating the risk. So they fairly estimate the risk. And it does them no good to overestimate it. They want to fairly estimate the risk. And the IMF, part of the banking system, does the same thing. IMF loans to countries, and what they're worried about is the destruction of countries and them defaulting on their national debt. The destruction of countries. entire nations of peoples, governments, their entire banking system, their currency, their gross domestic product, their output, everything they export, everything they import, zeroed out. That's the IMF. And they have people who calculate the risk of all these things happening. And they know. They know. They know the numbers, just like the insurance companies know the numbers. And if the insurance company is raising your insurance rates for fire protection or flood protection, then that's a signal to you. That's a signal from somebody who knows. They're on the computer. They're doing the analysis. They know. They're not guessing. And they're not woke, and they're not progressive, and they don't have an agenda. Well, they have an agenda. It's to make money and not go bankrupt. And so they fire up the computers and the artificial intelligence, and they enter all this data, and they get all this output, and they raise your insurance rate. They're signaling you something that they know. And they won't even tell you why they're increasing your rate. They'll simply do it. And if you don't like the new rate for your fire insurance, you'll have to go someplace else. Oh, but they've also raised their rates. Why is fire insurance so expensive these days, especially in California? They know that you're going to burn down. They know that. Or there's a risk that someone in your community is going to burn down, and of course they spread the risk as wide as they can. And even though I'm living in, part of the state that doesn't burn because it's all asphalt and concrete, doesn't really burn, nevertheless there are people who don't live too far from me whose houses will burn. And so my rates go up because they are going to burn. Guaranteed. The insurance companies know. Let me go back a little bit. I'm talking too much, but I just feel like I have to. So he's trying to make a point. He says, okay, we could, in the extreme, human extinction is not off the table. Okay, and then he says, then he questions. Okay, so who is saying this? The human extinction is one possibility. Who in the extreme is coming up with these off-the-wall prognostications for disaster? Who is it? I wonder. Is it a wild-eyed scientist? Is it a wild-eyed woke activist throwing, soup on the Mona Lisa? Who's coming up with these prognostications? Who's trying to scare the horses and frighten people and make them give up their guns and do everything else? Who is it? Okay, well, it's not any of those people. It's the IMF. And if you're paying attention, it's the insurance industry. Not your usual suspects for people prone to exaggeration. I couldn't help agree with that. We cannot go on like this. There is no continuation of business as usual. The longer you try to prolong business as usual, the worse the reckoning is going to be. The more exposed we are going to be to climate impacts. So what's the way out, right? You know the structure of a lecture like this. Someone comes along, tells you that's a really terrible problem, and now I have a solution for you. Here's how everything is going to be fine. Is that the structure of my talk? No, it isn't. He's not going to give you good news. Just like I don't give you good news. I never end my videos on a happy note like, but we'll innovate, we'll strive, we'll apply human ingenuity, and we'll all pull together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya and sunset picture, and it's all going to be fine. I never say that. I'll tell you, you're going to die. That's what I'm telling you. You're going to die. And chances are, if I got 60 followers, I got 60 people that are going to watch this video. I'd say 20 out of the 60. Yeah, sure. 20 out of the 60 of you people are going to die. Now, that's probably not exactly true. Even if 1/3 of the United States of America dies, where are those people going to be? They're going to be in the Southeast. They're going to be in the Southwest, Los Angeles. They're going to be in flood-prone parts of the Mississippi Valley. They're going to be in these places. They're going to be in Tornado Alley. They're going to be in Hurricane Alley. They're going to be, just talking about the U.S., just the U.S. alone, right? And those people don't watch YouTube channels about climate change and global heating. They don't. So none of the people that are watching my video are in any of those places. And those places are going to suffer really significant mortality, and those people are going to have to get out. My video just prior to this one was a message to the people of Florida, which basically TLDR, get out. Get out now while the getting's good. Sell your house at a loss. Take your money, whatever you can get out of it, and send the keys to the mortgage company and say, bye, I'm out, I'm done, goodbye, and leave. Just leave, whatever it takes, just get out. Go live with family, go live in, squalor. I don't know what you're going to do, but you have to get out, because if you don't, you're going to die, in all likelihood, because things are just going to get worse. So he's saying the same. Here he is saying the same thing. Anyone who promises you that everything is going to be fine and gives you the solution is someone you should not be listening to. The only way we're going to get through this is by going deeper into it and staying with the trouble. As in this quote from the great poet, where the danger is precisely there is for saving. We need to go more deeply into the danger, right, into the trouble. So let's start very close to home. What are you feeling right now? What's going on in your heads or your hearts right now? Perhaps you're a little bit unnerved. Maybe you're feeling a bit depressed. Maybe you're feeling some despair. If you're feeling any of those things, that is good. Because if you're feeling any of those things, you're actually starting to engage with reality. Yes. If you're not sometimes scared by the situation that we are in, then you're not paying attention. We need to listen to our feelings and take them seriously. That's okay. I think you need to be data-driven. And the scientists are telling you that global climate change is real. Well, that's what they say. Global heating is real. It's physics. There's no way to avoid it. We're not getting out of this without going through a very, very bad patch. It's going to be crushing. In other videos, I've predicted a 99% die-off of the human species, and that sounds impossible. How could that even happen? I'll tell you what, it'll happen, and you'll never even know that it happened. You'll never know. One of the reasons you might not know is because you are dead. You might be one of the 99%. So for you, the die-off is meaningless. And for a lot of people who survive it, the reason they survived it was because they lived in areas of absolute luxury and wealth. And of course, they're not going to be aware because they don't want to be. So the people who die, they tell no stories. They tell no tales. And the people who are isolated from it, insulated against it, they don't want to know. So you could have a 99% die-off of the human species, and the dead won't know nor care, and the living won't know and won't care either. That's just how it is. We need to learn to express. He's talking about feelings. I'm talking about data. We're kind of talking about the same thing. My anxieties come from my knowledge of the data and the science. He's not talking science here because he's a philosopher in front of a philosophy-adjacent audience. He's saying your feelings are important. If you feel badly about your situation, then it may just be that your situation is really fucked. Okay? And recognizing your feelings is a start. And I agree. If all you have is feelings, then recognizing your feelings is a start. And trust me, the people in western North Carolina, where Hurricane Helene basically took them right out. Okay? They're wiped. They're feeling anxiety and depression and fear for the future, and they need to reflect on that. They really do. Will they? Some might, 1%. And the rest of them are just going to go along as best they can. We need to learn to express our feelings more. We need to process them oh, that's ugly. Our situation is reminiscent of that occurred back in the 1930s and 1940s. And I'm going to mention here a great person from my country, Winston Churchill, who sought to raise the alarm about the great challenge of that time. And I don't need to remind you what that challenge was. He's probably in England with this presentation. Well, people have been trying to raise the alarm about this challenge that we face, and even less has been done in response to their warnings than was done in response to Churchill's warning. Okay, so Churchill was warning about the rise of fascism in Europe, and no one paid him any attention. That was despite the fact that the rise of fascism in Europe was actually on the news. It was a physical thing. People they're being run out of their shops and thrown into cattle cars and railed out to places no one even knew where they went. That was all really happening. Now, there were communications problems back in those days. A lot of news traveled by telegraph. We didn't have the internet, didn't have social media, blah, blah. Didn't have cell phones to record everything. But they knew well enough. You could go to the movie theater and watch a black and white newsreel out of Europe that had been, filmed 3 weeks before, and was making its way into theaters during the intermission. That's how they did things. People got a lot of their news from newsreels at the movie theater. People knew. And we know what's happening with climate change. And we're not doing anything about it. Why? We don't understand it. We don't believe it. I guess it's the same thing that happened in 1933 in Germany. People didn't believe it. They didn't understand it. They thought it was temporary. They thought it was a hoax. They thought it was a fluke. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Hitler doesn't seem like that bad of a guy to me, and they just kind of shrugged and went on, like they're doing right now with global heating. And, the results are going to be the same, I suppose. So as a result, we are in what Prime Minister Churchill called the age of consequences. That would be in 1933. The future is going to be tough. There is no way around that. There's no way I can sugarcoat that pill for you. But here's the thing. Things can get better as they get worse, because we get better things as things get worse. We respond, we rise to the occasion. This is only possible if we know that things are getting worse, and if we face up to them, we can learn from examples here, like that the Blitz spirit in my country, 1940s, in the Second World War, where people pulled together even when they were under the awful threat and reality of constant bombing designed to break their morale and prepare for invasion. That was his people's reality back in the 40s, 1940s. Invasion. Things got better as they got worse. As things got better, so there's no escape to our climate predicament. So what he's saying here, he's trying to find the silver lining. The bombing of London was terrible. The Nazis bombing London was awful. Lots of people died. He's seeing the silver lining. People pulled together. They rediscovered community. They rediscovered each other. They dug deep. And he's a philosopher talking, okay? They dug deep and found courage and morale and a will to help people. And there were great heroes emerged out of nowhere, pulling people from the rubble and helping the wounded. And they know they were heroes and they were unsung and no one ever gave them a medal, but it didn't matter. We got the best out of people. Please notice, the English discovered the best in people, while the Germans were exploring the worst of people. So I would say that as regards the Second World War and the bombing of London, it was much of a muchness. 6 of one, half dozen of another. Will we as a species find the best that our species can be? Now, that's my philosophy. I'm asking that question. I'm not using the example of the London Blitz and the bombings by the Nazis and where the English people dug deep and found the best they could be. I'm not talking about one group against another group. I'm talking about the entire planet trying to kill your narrow ass. The entire planet trying to kill you. Are we going to rise to that occasion? When there's no face, when there's no political ideology, when there's no statement of invasion or statement of purpose, the world doesn't care. The world is going to get hot. It's just the physics of this planet are going to murder people. 99% of the human race is going to die. And I can easily justify that. I can do the math. I can show you how that works. Lots of people will disagree, but a lot of other people will simply say, you can't talk like that. The hell I can't. If that's reality as I see it, and I can justify that, then I can say that. I don't care if it makes people cry. I don't care if it makes people fall into a fetal position and suck their thumb. I don't care. If that is a bona fide pathway forward, if there is a mathematical rationale for saying that, if it can be demonstrated that that is one of our possible futures, and it is entirely possible, then don't tell me I can't say that. And there are a lot of scientists who, if you put a beer in front of them and get them in a corner in a booth and start talking to them about the future, they'll say exactly what I just said. You're fucked. I don't know what the percentages are. Maybe it's 90%, maybe it's 95%, maybe it's 99%. I don't give a fuck. Here, give me another beer. People are doomed. They're not going to survive this. They're not going to survive. And even if 1% of the people, that sounds like nothing. That's 80 million people. That's 80 million people survive this. Look, we got 80 million billionaires and their entourage. You think these people aren't going to survive global heating? Seriously? 80 million, you don't think that 80 million millionaires can't buy their way into a private island or a private roost or a private castle in the sky? Literally, I could even engineer that if you wanted me to. You think 80 million people can't find a way to get out of the way of this steamroller? Give me a break. Well, that's only 1%. That's the mythical 1%. There you go. There is no equivalent of victory. The struggle that we face will not end with us winning. The struggle will continue for the rest of our lives until you die. And it will increase, but there is a way through if we stay with the trouble, if you grab it by the horns, okay? And if we dare to actually face the future, because only then can we start to change it. Maybe. And this is why Churchill said this: I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. One of his famous sayings. And you don't worry, I've got a solution, stay optimistic, everything's going to be fine. You didn't just look on the bright side. He said, I have nothing to offer you but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have to face the hard truth of our situation. That is the only way through. So remember, again, if in response, my words, you feel a little bit scared, a little bit angry, and a little bit overwhelmed, whatever it is, that's good. You are starting to get into the place you need to be in order to face up to this profound crisis. Pause. The captain on the Titanic could have just kept the knowledge that the ship was sinking to himself. And most likely he probably had an internal dialogue about what he should say to people. Should he just tell them that the ship is sinking? Because it is. He's talked to the engineers. He's been below decks. He's seen the damage. He knows how much water's coming in. The engineers have done the math quickly and they said, oh yeah, you're fucked. He knew. It wasn't a question to him. He knew. But did he have to tell anybody? See, that's a moral problem, isn't it? And you could say, well, of course he has to tell people. My God, how can they save themselves? What if he also knew that most of the people wouldn't be saved? Because he knew that too. He knew there weren't enough lifeboats on the Titanic to save everyone. Maybe most of the passengers, but not the crew. So, he can't save everyone. And he could simply say, well, we can't save everyone. Let's not save anyone. He could have taken that approach. He could have. And if you look at our media, our modern media, the newspapers and the talking heads on the nightly news and all the social media and all the tech companies, they're all kind of dancing around Should we tell them the truth? Should we tell people what's going on? Should we just keep it to ourselves? We don't want to frighten people, but maybe they have a right to know, right? The ship is sinking. They have a right to know, but on the other hand, they'll be frightened and they'll hate us for telling them. And what if the ship doesn't sink? Well, it is going to sink, but maybe people should just maybe we just open the bar and everyone get drunk, and then when the ship sinks, they'll sink inebriated. Yeah, these are all possibilities, right? Or you could know the truth and grapple with it. That's a possibility too. You're feeling these difficult emotions because you care. This crisis restores meaning to our lives. So here's where we are headed. We're headed towards catastrophe. We're towards dystopia. We're headed towards absolute disaster. How do we not end up there? Well, traditionally, the answer to that question was we need to posit a utopia, a perfect solution, unicorns, rainbows, right? A place to aim, and everything can be fine, but as I've explained to you, the utopian option in this case is completely closed to us. There is not going to be a solution and escape. Okay, to use my verbiage, we could select a controlled demolition. Still contains the word demolition, but a controlled demolition means we're going to try and avert as much damage as possible and maybe loss of life, right? We could do that, but we're not. We're going with an uncontrolled demolition, which clearly is 1,000 times worse. Maybe even infinitely worse. A controlled demolition, you might save something. You might even save a lot. An uncontrolled demolition, you may save nothing. We may go extinct. So how much worse is extinction or complete loss of technology than saving something? It's infinitely worse. It's infinitely worse. But there is no utopia. We don't know what we're going to get through. When those 80 million people show up on the other end of this, what's it going to look like for them? Well, they will have lost their civilization. They will have lost all their infrastructure. They will have lost probably everything they ever thought was important and eternal and immortal and sacred. So what's that going to look like to them at the end of that journey? I don't know. It's not going to be utopia. Okay, it's survival. That's nice. Survival is nice. Wow, I survived. That feels good. I mean, what happened was terrible, but I survived, so I can feel pretty good about that, right? Yeah, 80 million people will be able to feel great that they survived. Is that utopia? Somehow I don't think so. There is not going to be a solution and escape a utopia. But what I'm saying is that despite the extreme challenges we face, in fact, to put it more precisely, because of the extreme challenges we face, we could be on the cusp of a flourishing future if we imagine something other than dystopias, uncontrolled demolition. And utopias, if we want to try and imagine something different from where we are going without positing some dream, some fantasy of a perfect future if we face reality. And we are willing to go through with it. He is kind of talking about a controlled demolition, by the way. And you'll see what I mean here. He's calling it Throughtopia. This translation is read wrong. He's calling it Throughtopia. It's the dream of going through this, of getting through it, of surviving and dragging forward something from the past. That's his Throughtopia. He's not saying it's going to be beautiful. He's not saying it's going to be, the best of all possible worlds. He's saying we have to get through this. Many people are going to suffer and die. But we can get through this. How do we do that? The equivalent would be, how do we get people on the lifeboats of the Titanic? We can do this. There's not enough lifeboats. And yet, we can get people on some of the lifeboats, and some of those people on lifeboats will survive. How can we do that? How can we get through this terrible calamity to that point? Throughtopia. I'm sorry, it's misspelling it. So he's offering a headspace. to give you something to think about besides either complete disaster, possibly even extinction, or some weird, unattainable fantasy of life in the clouds, right? Which, by the way, that some Christian sects will tell you is the rapture, that they literally are elevated off the land, lifted off the surface of the earth bodily, lifted off the surface into the clouds where they join God and Jesus, right? That kind of utopia, right? Let's say we can't have that. What can we have? We can have a process of getting through this, Focus on getting through it. But I want to leave you to start to imagine the other. Creating a utopia is not a spectator sport. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We can know for sure is that making the future together is not a spectator sport. It requires your active participation. It necessarily includes you. And this is the thought I want to leave you with. Our children will have only one serious question for us when we are looking back on our lives. I've used that notion many times in my videos. And I think the question, I think each of you can well imagine what our children will ask. And it's, what did you do? How did we get here? What's the story of how we survived? What did you do when you knew? What did you do? What part did you play? It's the only question. See? So you can feel it. We all want the best for our kids. You cannot secure the best for your kids anymore, not even for your own kids, by just trying to protect them, get them into a good school, etc. This crisis is coming for everyone, and it is going to get worse forever until we move to address it and to find a way through. Okay. This crisis never gets better. He says it'll get worse until we address it. Until. There is no until. There's no until. This crisis will get worse. Full stop. How long does it get worse? Now, that's an actual question. That has to do with physics and what we know about the Earth dynamic system and how prevalent is chaos in the system. And we can't really predict too much because of the chaotic elements, but we know it's going to go down hard. And the system is racing away from us, and we're not coping adequately. We should be moving out of Florida. We should be moving out of the Southwest. We're not. We're going to get steamrolled. So there's a lot of things we get to talk about. But what we can never talk about is this getting better. There's nothing you can do to make this situation better. You can do a lot to make your personal situation better. You could do something to not die, which is better. You can do something to be with the people you need to be with. Okay, that is within your purview. That is the human scale of this. You can do something to improve your situation vis-a-vis this crisis. But you can do nothing about what is coming. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing science can do. There's nothing technology can do. We are fucked. This thing is going down. That's just how it is. And you need to get out of the way. If that means if you're on a Titanic, then getting out of the way means you get on a lifeboat. That's what that means if you're on the Titanic. In our current situation with global heating, we need to look for something like lifeboats. You need to find a way to make something like a lifeboat for you and your kin and your neighbors and your family and the people you care about. And what does that look like in the aspect of global heating? The only thing I can come up with, the quickest, easiest recommendation I have is village life. Because you can't do this alone. Foursquare, absolutely guaranteed you're not going to survive this alone. I don't care how many bullets you've got. I don't care how mean your dog is. I don't care how far up you live in the woods. You're not going to survive this alone. You're not. You're just not. When the fossil fuels are gone and that suddenly hits home and you realize what that means, then you're going to realize why I just said what I said. You're not going to survive this alone. when it's 140 degrees outside and you haven't had anything to eat, and there's dead bodies all over the place and bloated and corpses, and you go to the store and the store is empty and you have to rush back to your bunker because that's the only place you can survive because that's the only place that's cool, then you realize that you're not going to survive this alone. But by then, you're dead. You're done. Then that's too late to realize you're not going to survive this alone. So I'm telling you right now, you're not going to survive this alone. Will you survive this in a village context where you've got another 100 or 150 people working together to help bring all the resources you all need collectively to survive? Maybe. But I can promise you one thing. Individually, you're not. And in the future, when people do sit down, when the elders do sit down with the children, and the children are all sitting on the floor around their feet, and the children are saying, tell us a story, Grandpa, tell us a story, Grandma. How did we survive this? Then you're going to have some things to say. And everyone who's in that situation, no matter whether they're in Russia, Chile, China, Africa, wherever they are, whatever the color of their skin or the language they use or the religion they follow, they're going to sit down and they're going to be surrounded by the little grandkids and they're going to say, tell us the story, tell us the story. And the story is always going to be the same. Well, we got together with our neighbors and we got the resources we thought we were going to need, and we had to defend those against marauders, and eventually we had to defend ourselves against the planet itself. And because we did that, we survived. And we don't know who else survived because no one outside of our village is alive. And this is all we are. And we haven't heard from anybody since. That's going to be the story. Unless maybe there's another village 10 miles away that also survived. It's going to happen in groups. And that's the equivalent of a lifeboat for this scenario. And he's saying we have to get through this. We have to find a way through. I mean, I'm telling you what that way is. And he kind of does too. He's not too prescriptive in this, but you watch the video, you'll see it. Let me prime you for that. He's talking about community life, pulling together village life, recreating village life, having lots of people who all know how to survive, who all agree on what we're doing, who have skills, knowledge, and gumption. Okay, the willingness to work hard, the willingness to struggle, the willingness to get through it, which is going to be a completely different mindset. And how many people can adopt a new mindset? Damn few. Very few. 1%, maybe. And I keep coming back to the same number, right? 80 million people are going to survive this. 1% of the current population is going to survive this. 1%. That's probably the 1% that have some combination of money, forethought, education and knowledge, skills, right? Don't care where you got your skills or your education. You have them, okay? Materials. Do you have shovel? Do you have seeds? Do you have fertilizer? Do you have water, right? There's going to be some list of things that people had. And those will be the people who make it through. And 1% of the people will be able to bring something like that to the community. And they'll be let in because they've got something the community needs. And they got the right attitude, and they're going to pull together, and they're going to make it work. They're going to rise up and stand up, and they're going to be counted, and they're going to make it work. And if it doesn't work for all of them, then they're all going to die, but they'll die trying. And when you're done dreaming about the perfect, white Christian nationalist government, when you're done dreaming about unicorns and recycling and solar panel and wind farms, and when you're done dreaming, when you've given up on all that utopian business, then you're going to sit down and you can say, well, what can I do? What can I do? What should I do? Here I am, one person. And I'm the 1 out of 100 who's asking the question, what can I do? Well, maybe if you ask that question, and maybe if you follow up on it, and maybe if you broach that question to your neighbors, and maybe if you find enough people with a like mind, and maybe if you have time, and maybe if you don't get steamrolled, and maybe you're not in the wrong place at the wrong time, then maybe you get to be the group of people that makes it through. Maybe. But if you don't try, you won't be. Is that clear enough? I hope that's clear. We don't know who's going to survive this, but whoever survives this will have that story to tell. That's going to be their story. First we were a dozen, then we were 20, then before we knew it we were 100, and we were working together and we figured it out. That's going to be their story. That's it. There is no other story. That's what a lifeboat looks like in this context. Let's hear what Rupert has to say. Watch what Rupert has to say. We can do this together. We can find a way through Topia, remember? You are here today, are superbly placed to contribute meaningfully to that task of building through Topia. And this is a thought I want to leave you with. See, he's really serious about this. This is why you are at this event. Is that my wife calling? It is, but I'm not going to take it right now. This is almost done. See, this is why you are here. You are here to learn or to enter more deeply into service. You are here to contribute to the path through the chaos that is coming at us. You are here to help imagine and then create through Topia. This is why you are here. Most people in his audience don't know that. That's why they're there. Thank you for being here. Yeah, he's done. I'm done too. So again, the link to the original is in the description of this video. Please go watch it. I want you to watch it a couple of times. He's a philosopher. He's not a scientist. I'm a scientist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm a savage. But he and I are saying the same thing. He has given up on politics and economics and religion. He's given up. That's not the way forward. He's saying people are the way forward and not individuals, although it starts with the individual. Groups of people working together in cooperation with an eye to survival, with every day reminding themselves that's what they're doing. They're not in it to get rich. They're not in it for the political power. They're not in it to find Jesus. They're not in it for any other reason. They're in it to survive. That's it. They want to be the 1% that makes it through. He calls it Topia. Focus on getting through this. Don't focus on where you're going to end up. Everyone's going to end up in the same place. Even if they're living in a castle in the sky, everyone's going to end up in the same place. This civilization is done. This civilization is cooked, literally and figuratively. Okay? This civilization is cooked. It's done. And it doesn't matter if it takes 5 years or 10 years. And by the way, those are probably the only two options. This civilization could start to collapse next year. No joke. And once it starts to collapse, I give it a few years. And before it's gone. And maybe even 18 months. As soon as it gets started in a big way, 18 months later, it's gone. And, oh man, and once it's gone, you're going to find it's piss poor pickings after that. Once it's gone, you're not going to have gasoline or diesel. You may not have electricity. You may not have tap water. You'll have no governance, no first responders, and you better have a community. You better have your walls. You better have your people. You better have your snarling dogs. You better have all of that shit figured out as soon as this starts, because you'll have about 18 months. And it could start any time. This thing could kick off any time. The fuse is lit. I don't know how long it's going to take for that fuse to burn down, but this shit show could blow up any time. No joke. Could blow up any time. So there you go. That's all I got, and we'll leave it there for now. Maybe I'll be back. I don't know. Kind of busy.